Welcome to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast, hosted by Renita Ray-Davis, licensed clinical social worker, board-approved social work clinical supervisor, and facilitator of the Goddesses of Social Work supervision community. Join us as we travel through the social work journeys told by the Goddesses of Social Work community members, past and present, as they make their way toward clinical licensure.
Welcome to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. I am your host, Renita Ray-Davis, and I'm here today with C. Nathaniel Brown. C. Nathaniel Brown is an award-winning filmmaker, best-selling author, and storytelling coach. In addition to being CEO of the Atlanta-based media and entertainment company Expected in Entertainment, Brown is founder and executive director of Exposed Dementia, Inc., a nonprofit organization created to utilize the arts and media to educate about dementia, erase stigma, and advocate for those living with dementia and their care partners. He is also a certified dementia practitioner. After feeling the impact that dementia has had on his family, the Baltimore native produced a short film called That's My Brother, which depicted a portion of his aunts and cousins' stories. That led to the creation of Remember Me, Dementia in the African American Community, an award-winning documentary that features interviews with people living with dementia, their care partners, dementia researchers, and other dementia experts. The documentary has screened in cities across the country, including Baltimore, Atlanta, Chicago, Detroit, and New Orleans at Essence Fest 2024. Brown is also the author of Exposing Dementia, 8 Critical Takeaways for African Americans. His 21st book that also seeks to educate the community about dementia and its impact. Nurse scientist Dr. Fayron Epps, who is also featured in the documentary, wrote the foreword for the book. In March 2025, Brown and his team hosted the inaugural Exposed Dementia Conference at the Maritime Conference Center in Maryland. The conference focused on the arts and media and featured a comedy show, film festival, art exhibition, and educational sessions from dementia experts, including music, art, dance, and Lego therapists. Brown has been recognized for his work in the dementia space. His awards includes Maud's Award for Innovation in Alzheimer's Care, Dementia Arts Impact Award, the Leader in Alzheimer's Support Award, and International Impact Book Award in Health. In his spare time, Brown enjoys eating pizza, watching sports and movies, and spending time with family and friends. He resides in Atlanta with his wife of 30 years, Ray Alexander. Welcome to the podcast, Chuck.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're so glad you're here. So glad you're here. And I am so glad that you said yes. And my goodness, what an impressive bio. And one that I'm excited to delve into and learn more about your journey, especially in this Alzheimer and dementia space. But what piqued my curiosity the most, and I didn't see it in your background and your bio, is you just upped and created 2 film documentaries, not just documentaries, but award-winning documentaries. I'm curious, where does your background in film come from?
So I'll try to give you the short version of the story, but
Mhm.
feel free to ask any questions that you want. So I've been writing from the time I was a kid, probably 4 years old. I used to watch my mother write. So I used to try to just write while she's writing, not knowing what she was writing, but I always had a love for writing. And so as a kid, I used to write things that I saw in my family and said, you know what? One day I'm going to put this on TV. One day I'm going to put this in a movie. And I would just write it on a note or on a notepad or tissue and stick it in my what I had as a junk drawer. And that evolved into a duffel bag. And so I knew at some point I was going to use a lot of those story ideas. And that was what initially piqued my interest in film and TV, as well as writing. I ended up being a professional journalist. So I spent 20 plus years as a newspaper and magazine reporter and editor. And that kind of gave me the foundation to be a professional storyteller. I started writing books. I started, doing short films and poetry and other things. And so I knew it would eventually lead me to the film and TV side of things. And so while I had a photography studio, which is something else that
Mm,
I do, I had
mhm.
interns that one of the interns was a film student. And I was like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity for me to use one of my ideas. And we did it. And then I fell in love with it. And I said, you know what? I have to do more of this. So my wife and I moved to Atlanta in 2011 to pursue the entertainment and media industries. And that's kind of what kicked off my career as a filmmaker.
So you took a huge leap of faith. You did one film with your student, and
Yeah.
then you and your wife just was like, we got to move to Atlanta.
Pretty much, yeah. We looked at LA, New York, and Atlanta was the best fit for us at the time. But we both wanted to be here because of our interest in writing and storytelling and all of those types of things. But I needed to be in the culture that was things were happening around what I was interested in.
Yeah. How has Atlanta treated you so far?
Oh, it's been fantastic. Yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic. The people that I've had a chance to meet and work with, just the creativity that's around, the opportunities to be creative, and not just one way of doing things. So it made it easy
Mhm.
for me to get acclimated and think I should have done this 10 years earlier.
Isn't that what happens? We're like, why
Yeah,
didn't I do this sooner? Yeah. I literally had that thought yesterday about something like, why didn't I do this sooner? I want to, I know we will get to, your journey and why you're here, but I literally just yesterday was writing about storytelling. And my own love of words. I'm a Gemini
mhm.
and I love words. I love reading. I'm reading my sister and I, we were in Las Vegas last month for Maria Shriver's Women in Alzheimer's Movement, and she gave each one of us her book for free. I Am Maria. Usually when you get a free book, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I actually, I actually started reading it, and I'm enjoying it. And it's a book of poetry, but she gives you this little short biography of her life in the beginning, and then the majority of the book is the poems. But because you get this short biography of her life in the beginning, you can see where those poems could
Right.
potentially fit into the story of her life, and and also at the same time, simultaneously, because I am a Gemini and I do love words and reading. I'm listening to Tarana Burke and Brene Brown's "You Are Your Best Thing" and the
Yeah.
essays of all those amazing uh, black and brown storytellers, and just seeing people, reading Maria Shriver's book, I Am Maria, listening to the You Are Your Best Thing anthology with those storytellers, and seeing all the different ways that people are telling the story of their lives. For
Right.
me right now, it's just like it just feels so important that you get the story of your life down on paper, whether it be through poetry, whether it be through an essay, whether you create a book or not. But it feels like the importance of storytelling and telling your own story right now just seems to be in the forefront of my mind. Do you have
Absolutely.
any thoughts about storytelling as it relates to your own life?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in addition to some of the other things we talked about, and you did mention it in the bio, I'm a storytelling coach.
Mm,
So, I help people tell stories, both fiction and nonfiction. And I think it's important because nobody has your perspective. Nobody can tell the same story in the same place. Think about the Bible. You have
mm,
different variations of the same story from people being in the same room. And
yeah.
so you have a unique voice. Everyone has a unique voice. And what do you want to do with that voice, or what do you want to share about your life and your experiences? That's up to you. But I just try to help people to understand that, there is a unique voice and you do have an audience. And so you can create what you want to create, whether that audience is yourself. Like,
Hmm.
I love to read my own writing because I'm like, wow, I wrote that. Like, how did I think of that? How did it go from this thought to end up being here? Like, it's just a unique thing that we all have. And we just need, sometimes we need a little bit of encouragement. We need a little bit of a push. So a lot of times I tell my writers, I'm right behind you.
Mm,
My foot is raising. I might kick you a little bit to push you a little bit further, but it's just because I know how important storytelling is. It's a gift that we have, even if it's not in the way that somebody else does it, or somebody else says it, or the way someone interviews or answers,
mm,
but you still have a unique voice that needs to be heard.
mhm. What, Chuck, what are some of the things you've seen? And when I almost started this question with what are some of the successes you've had with the writers that you work with? And automatically that went to, oh, they're on the national best-selling list, but that's not what I meant. Like
Mhm.
successes in seeing them come scared to start their storytelling process, and then at the end of working with you, the metamorphosis that I'm sure that you've seen in people. What
Yeah.
are some of those successes and not necessarily accomplishments that you've seen
Right.
with people?
It's so many. And
Mm,
a lot of times I use my own examples when I'm sharing with people of what to look for to be able to call it a success. Because your success is defined by you, not by somebody
mhm,
else's standard. And
mhm.
so I wrote a book years ago. I think I ended up publishing it around 2011, but it was a part of a testimony in my struggles coming out of a situation where I deal with depression, and I kind of share what I was going
Yeah.
through. And I wrote it for me. It was therapeutic. But after it reached the hands of several people that needed it, that wanted to hear it at that moment, people that were going to commit suicide said, I didn't commit
Mm,
suicide because I read your book. And I
mhm,
realized that I could make it through if you made it through. I was about to leave my wife tonight, but I saw what you and your wife been through, and you're still here. I decided to stay. And so I share those examples to some of my writers, and I've heard things like that. I feel like I'm a better person because I let my voice out. Or I now know I can do other things because this has always been a dream. And you helped me realize this dream. Now I can go and dream something else. So there are those types of stories that really mean a lot to me, because it's not just writing a book, telling a story, publishing an article. It's about moving you further, and then you impacting the people who read your work or listen to you, or whatever your area of storytelling might be. But it's just to be able to get your things done and then impact the people that are your audience, because you do have a specific audience.
Yeah. And I think too, people could be like, well, I'm not going to be Stephen King or Jay, or some of my favorites are Toni Morrison and Dr. Maya Angelou, right? But
Hmm.
so then they won't even bother to write. But what I heard you say, and what I loved, a couple of things, is you might be your only audience, right? And
Absolutely.
you are your most important audience, and you're an audience that matters. And so write for you. But then two, once you do write and other people read it, your story resonates. You don't even know with who.
Right.
You won't even know with who until you write it. And
Right.
then third, as social workers, and that's who our main audience it is, the guys in social work podcast. But our main audience is social workers. Being able to encourage our clients to write their stories when they're feeling depression or
Hmm.
suicide or isolation could be a form of. I love that you said it was therapeutic for you to write
Yeah.
your story, and then it's turned into 21 books. You now a writing coach. I'm wondering, the first time you wrote your story, did you see that this is where you were going to be, then that you would be here now?
I'm gonna say yes,
Yeah, I love
because
that
like
for
I
you.
said, from the writing standpoint, I knew that I was always gonna write. I just knew that.
Hmm.
I just didn't know which areas at what time. And so once I realized that I could do all of it, that I
Yeah.
could write a book, I could write articles, I could write for magazines, I could write a movie, I could write TV show, I could write letters, I could whatever. Once I realized that I could do all of those things, it just became fuel to do more. And so my story with my first book back in 1996, it was
Mm.
a tragedy turned into triumph. It was a collection of poems like Maria Shriver, and I sent it to about 20 publishers. And I'm thinking, oh, they're all gonna love it, and there's gonna be a bidding war, and it's gonna be great. And I got all rejection letters, and I was defeated. I'm like, but I love it. You should love it. And so what happened was that was my introduction into publishing because I figured out how to do it myself. I said, you know what? I don't need you to tell me if it's good enough. I believe it's good enough and somebody's going to like it. So let me figure it out. Once I figured that out, I said, you know what? There are other people just like me who need help in figuring out this process and publishing their book and learning how to do these things. And so that started me on that journey. And so I never depended on anybody else to tell me, yes, you can, no, you can't. Now, I still might say, you know what? I want this film to be on BET, and BET might not want it. Okay, cool. I got to find a different route. But I can also figure out, okay, I can still get people to see it. I'll put it up on YouTube for free. So there are those things that happen in my writing journey that shifted me as well to be able to say, I can do it a different way. I can help other people to do it who might not have the same, I'm going to figure it out on my own. But if I can tell them, hey, I can help you. Let me grab you by the hand. We can do this thing together. And one of my writing clients who is a social worker,
Yeah.
she writes a lot about compassion fatigue,
Hmm.
and overcoming, those challenges when you're caring for others. And she's gone on to be an international speaker. She does conferences, and she utilized that book as a tool to get in the door. And so, as an expert in the field, it opens up doors. So, I've done a lot for, business writers, who have entrepreneurs who have businesses or trying to do certain things for ministers as well. You're trying to build your congregation, let them know who you are through your book. So just those types of things. There's ways that we can do it to help us individually first, but then also to meet the goals that we set for ourselves.
I love that. And I promise we're transitioning to the real reason you're here. But I don't know
It's all
why.
connected. It's
It
all
is,
connected.
isn't it? Because I do love words so much in writing
Yeah.
and didn't realize we were going to zone into this so much. But one of the things that you said, maybe I want to get my film on BET, but then I realized I could put it on YouTube and impact people in that way. I don't even have cable. You know what I mean? But I have YouTube. And so when we get so fixated on, oh, I wanted to be on here and that
Mhm.
will mean I did it. But then we're like, oh, I could easily create a YouTube channel. I'm on YouTube all the time. Oh, Exposed
Right.
Dementia. Yeah, remember me is on YouTube and you're touching people who don't even have access to BET. But when we stay limited to this is how I wanted to get done, we're going to miss some people who we were supposed to engage with or interact with by
Absolutely.
thinking outside the box and opening ourselves to all the possibilities of how our work can get out there versus just as one more visible way our work can get out there.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. I want to transition into our next question, which is always, I always love to hear about people's journeys and how they got here. And, I love that, you all working with social workers and all that, but I'm not asking you about your social work journey. I'm just asking about your journey and how you arrived in this work and where do you see it going?
Right. Well, my purpose in this area has come through my personal pain, with
Mm,
my family. We've had several family members who have died with some form of dementia. At the time, I just say dementia because we didn't know what particular type it was. We never talked about it. So that was a challenge. But it was a few years ago that I saw my aunt, who's also my godmother, for the first time since she started losing her memory. And that's what broke me. And I deal with things creatively. I'll write something, I'll photograph something, I'll make a movie. I'll figure out a creative way to deal with my emotions, which is how the book came about that I mentioned earlier. I was dealing with my emotions and I was trying to figure it out. So I wrote through it. With this, I said I'm gonna do that short film called That's My Brother because my aunt was calling her daughter her sister. She didn't recognize her as her daughter. And so I did that to be able to share that little bit of their story. And people started asking me questions. They said, "What type of dementia does she have?" All I ever knew was dementia. So I said, "Dementia, dementia. What you talking about?" And so that was the first time I heard that there were over 100 types of dementia. And it blew me away because, as I said, I had spent 20 plus years as a general assignment reporter covering so many different topics. I have a couple of degrees and certificates and all of that. So I'm like, how come I don't know about this? And I saw it and we never talked about it. So that was what started me on this journey to learn more. And the more I learned, the more I said, I know there are other people that don't know, especially in my family, especially in my community. And I said, what can I do to address this and create a conversation so that other people can say, I know now because I heard the conversation, I saw the movie, I did this, we had conversations. And so that's how I came up with Remember Me to mention the African American community is because I wanted to have that conversation through film where we interviewed my family, or we all interviewed other families who have dealt with it in some way, whether it's they're going through it themselves, they're caregivers, they're professionals in the space. And so that was my introduction into the space. At that point, after I did That's My Brother, I thought I was done. After I did Remember Me, I'm thinking I was done. I did the book to kind of give more information. I thought I was done. Every time I tried, God was pulling me back. It's like, nope, you have more to do. You have more to do. And so eventually, we formed Exposed Dementia Incorporated, which is our nonprofit organization, which now gives us a little more to do because the need is so great. And so I thought it was over one time. I thought it was over two times. But I understand now why he used that pain that I was experiencing, and he turned it into my purpose. He turned it into passion to be able to help other people.
That is an incredible story, Chuck. And I guess I want to dig even a little bit more deeply.
Sure.
You had been writing and you knew that writing and filmmaking for you was helping you to was cathartic, like you said,
Hmm.
therapeutic for you. Your intention was never to enter the Alzheimer's and dementia space.
No.
And then you did the Remember Me, and then you did the book. But how every time I see you, you are at an Alzheimer's dementia event, and I guess how did you? How are you so entrenched when that wasn't ever your? Does the question I'm asking make sense? Yeah, how are you so
Yes,
entrenched?
absolutely. So I think the turning point was understanding when I tried to leave several times, and God told me, you have a voice that will reach people that nobody else can. And he said they have a voice that they can reach people that you will never be able to. So that took the competition out of it for me first. Like there is no competition. There is no, hard feelings or bad energy or negativity associated with what I was doing. I knew what I was being called to do, and that made it easy. So then it was engraft myself into the community so that I can understand, that I can know, I can see who's doing what, how are they doing it, how can I support them, what can they offer me in this journey, how can we work together. And so that led me to connect with organizations like the Alzheimer's Association, Alzheimer's Foundation of America, the Lewy Body Foundation, all of them. My aunt has Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. I never even heard of that before. We didn't even know like halfway through the documentary, so it's not even mentioned in the documentary. I had to ask my cousin, and she had to go back to the doctor because she said dementia, the same thing I said. So she went back to the doctor and asked them, and then they finally said Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, which is a combination of alcoholism and vitamin B12 deficiency. I had no clue. And so by me being in those spaces, I'm attending pretty much every webinar I can, any event I can in different cities, everywhere, because I'm still learning. And I know that people are going to now ask me questions. I want to at least be able to answer if I can answer, but then direct them to some of these organizations and experts that I'm running into on a daily basis, because I don't have to be the one to tell them, as long as they get the information. And so if I can't answer and I don't know who to send them to, that's a problem. So if I can at least say, here, I don't know if this person can help you, but if they can't, they can direct you somewhere else to be able to help you. We just need to get the information. And so I have to be the first one. Like I sit there and I eat it all up and I digest everything because I'm a lifelong learner as well. And so I know that if I learn something, I'm responsible to share it. And then likewise, I'm responsible to connect people to the resources if I can.
That is beautiful. That's social work too.
Thank you.
That is beautiful. One of the things I'm not even going to pretend to try to say the diagnosis your aunt has, the B12, and um,
Yeah.
I've never heard of that till just this moment. But what that triggered for me was one of the things is I'm entering this space very newly, even though adjacently my sister's been doing amazing work in it
Yes,
for
she
over
has.
20. I mean, yeah, shout out to Dr. Kendra Ray, but um, you know, so I've read her papers and, went to adjacently, but that's
Hmm.
Kendra's work. But now being in it, one of the things that I'm hearing over and over again, especially in the African American community, is exactly what you said. One, what is dementia? People don't, she just lost her memory, or that's just,
Right.
she's just getting old. They don't realize that that's not a normal part of aging, maybe.
Right.
Um, and or oh, there's 100 and however many you just said forms of dementia.
Hmm.
What has been your experience hearing, especially within African American community, that we just don't even know about dementia and getting diagnoses like the one your aunt has?
Yeah, that's the challenge, because most of us have experienced it in some way or have seen it, but we haven't had the conversations, or we don't go to the doctor to get an official diagnosis. And if you don't get an official diagnosis, you can't treat it. You don't know what you're dealing with. And so we go into these cycles where we're not getting the help, the resources that we could if we do talk about it, if we do go get tested, if we do learn about the different types of dementias and causes, and learn that how our blood pressure or diabetes or high cholesterol plays a part, or how alcohol and drugs play a part, or how the fact that we're not sleeping enough plays a part. So it's all of these things that we just don't know. I used to be one to say, I'll sleep when I die. I'm gonna be up all night. I'm gonna do this. I'm ripping and running. Yeah, I didn't realize that that's affecting everything else. So we have to be able to teach those things as much as we can when we do know. When we learn them, we share that information. But it's tough for somebody now to say, "Oh, you need to eat a Mediterranean diet because it's heart healthy and brain healthy." And you're like, "Okay, for 45 years, you've been feeding me this, that, and the other thing, and now you're just telling me to change and eat leaves." That it's a hard thing to do. But we do have to share that information so people can make the decision for themselves. And then we have to start earlier with education so that people are aware of, this could potentially lead to this. It doesn't mean it's going to stop it. Like, we don't know enough to say if you don't eat fried foods, you're not going to get dementia, because there are so many other causes and things that can lead to it. But we just want to be able to have a better lifestyle, that we can live longer, better lives. And it just takes one step at a time. We can't do it all in one day. We can't just change. You read in my bio that I love pizza.
Yeah.
That's my favorite food. I just don't eat it as often as I used to now that I understand what that does to my body. And so those are the types of changes that we need to make in our lives, one step at a time, and not look down upon anybody. If you're doing a Mediterranean diet and I don't eat it, and I'm trying to do better, it's like, don't look down on me. Celebrate that and say, good job, keep doing better. Okay, now let's work on that sleeping. Okay, now let's work on your blood pressure or whatever it is. And if we do it collectively as a community, that's when we make a difference. Then we can teach the younger generation. Then 20, 30, 50 years from now, we won't have the same conversation.
Perfect. It starts with education. It starts with education.
Absolutely.
But in what and I'm looking at your shirt, Exposed Dementia, and all
Yes.
you're doing, even in this conversation right now, is exposing dementia. And it just
Yes.
seems such an appropriate title to the work that or label to the work that you're doing. Do you want to speak a little bit about Exposed Dementia and its mission and vision?
Yeah, it's really simple. I didn't want to go back to school. and become a neurologist or a neuropsychologist or any of those things. I said, you know what? I want to be able to utilize what I know, what I do. And so exposed dementia is basically utilizing media and entertainment. So that's books, that's movies, that's art, that's music, that's photography. How do we use these things to have an impact? And that could be in an educational way, that could be in a therapy way, that could be in for respite for caregivers. We want to just incorporate that into all that we do. And so if we're exposing something, that means we're bringing light to it. We're magnifying it so that people can understand that it's of importance. You should take a look. You should take a listen. And so if we're able to do that creatively, it might be a little bit easier to have that conversation, which is why we did the comedy show, which is why we did the art exhibit, which is why we had art therapist and a Lego therapist and a music therapist, and all of those things are part of our conference, is because we want to be creative in having that conversation. So people came to the comedy show just for comedy. They just wanted to come to laugh. But they didn't realize that three of the comedians had caregiver stories and they incorporated that into their material. Now you heard something that you weren't coming to expect. You've been exposed to it. Now we can have a conversation because you at least understand that piece of it. And so that's what we're trying to do with exposed dementia. When we do our respite programs, it's going to be art based. So it's going to involve music, it's going to involve games and puzzles and all of those things. We want to focus on those areas to both stimulate you, keep you engaged, but then keep you learning and growing and living healthier.
I literally was going to bring up your conference because I heard
Uh,
nothing but amazing. Like I, I heard not less than 5 times that you should put on a workshop. What's it called? Master work,
Masterclass.
a master class. Thank you. A
Yeah.
master class on
Dr.
how.
Kendra has said that to me
Yeah,
several
yeah.
times.
She called and she's texted me. She's like, Chuck needs to put on a master class on how to put on a workshop. And obviously she's coming from a licensed creative arts lens, and for you to have the artists and the comedians and I think there
Mhm.
was even a gospel show or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
Y-
we try to include a lot of things. But I
yeah.
think the biggest thing we said from the very beginning, everybody that we invited, we said, hey, it's going to be a hug fest. So
Mm,
just be prepared for it. And the moment people started arriving, it was hugs, it was smiles. So the atmosphere was set. And that's what we wanted to be able to create. We didn't want you to just come and say, okay, here's this scientific piece and here's this paper and here, we do want you to get that information that way as well, but we wanted to create the environment to make it easier for you to relax and get to know who's around you and partner with the people that you meet and things like that. And so that was the success of the conference for us. It was the environment that everybody felt safe, they felt loved, they felt appreciated, both the people that were coming just as a participant and those who were presenting. And so we want to try to create that atmosphere in everything that we do because we all need love.
mm.
And, I want to be defined by love. And so if you meet me and we have an exchange and you don't feel love, you need to tell me because I'm going to do something to try to fix that because I want you to know that I love you when I interact with you, if you're a part of me or whatever. So that's why I introduced the conference and said it's going to be a hug fest. Come on. And so we were hugging, we were smiling, we were laughing. We had a good time around a topic that is so heavy. And I think that made the difference in us having some genuine conversations and then being inspired and motivated to move forward to say, how can we keep this up? How can we do this in other areas? How can I use this to impact the person that I'm mentoring? Or whatever the case might be, let's continue. And so that's what we're trying to do.
And you know what, Chuck? One of the things I have the honor, I say I feel like in almost every podcast, but it's truly my life's work and honor and what I'm so passionate about right now. But I have the honor of supervising some amazing social work social workers to clinical licensure. And one of the things I push, it was one of our hot topics last week, is what are you passionate about and how are you using it within your social work practice? Because in school, all these degrees and certificates we got,
Right.
it was almost like you push that away. Don't even, can't be passionate and do the work and do this career. You have to focus on the career, and your passion is a side hobby or hustle.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky, you can make a little bit of money on the side on it. And one of the things that I hope that I'm bringing is how can we pull both of those things together? Because that's how we will prevent burnout. Because
Hmm.
statistics say that social work burnout happens 5 to 7 years after graduating. 5 to 7 years. I've
Mm,
been doing this work for 26 years, and so I
right.
know that I've seen people get degrees, pay lots of money, and now they're a pharmacy tech, or they're, doing something else because it's really tough work. But if you're
Right.
able to pull in what you're passionate about, and what you've learned, with your degree and your licenses, then you can have a 30-year long career. And what I'm hearing you say, especially with this amazing conference you put on, is you brought people who were passionate about Alzheimer's and dementia, but also had this other skill set like comedy or art, and they brought it together to help educate and entertain people. And those people that came felt seen and loved and heard. So
Absolutely.
it is so important to me. This is just confirmation and validation that we don't put our passions to the side, but we bring those things along with us, because that is one God's gift that He gave you. He wants you to use that in the work that is also your career.
Absolutely. So you mentioned a couple of words that, so my production company, which is our umbrella company for media and entertainment, which is what the documentary is under, is called Expected End Entertainment. And our motto or tagline, if you will, is entertaining, educating, and empowering. So that's what we want to create through that. And so exposed dementia is basically a lineage of that. So it's still going to incorporate those things because that's, a big part of who I am and what I do. Still going to be entertaining, still going to educate, and it's still going to empower you. So the entertainment part of it, it could be making you laugh, it could be making you smile, it could be seeing, yourself in something that we create. But then the educational part of it is you're going to learn something. You might learn something about yourself. You might learn something about a topic. We've done projects on domestic violence, sexual abuse, mental health, all of those things. So although it could be entertaining, it's also going to educate you. But then the empowerment part of it comes when you understand what it is you just learned. Now, what are you going to do with that? So it's not just about coming to a conference and being excited and mixing your entertainment part with your educational part, but now how are you empowered and how are you empowering other people? And so that's the next step of it. And so that's what I try to do for myself personally, even when I'm at all these events and conferences and I'm learning, and whether it's entertaining or not, if I'm learning and I'm being educated about it, how am I going to use it to empower myself? But then how am I going to use it to empower other people? So I got to take that information. I got to do something with it. I got to share it, even if it's a share on Facebook or Instagram or share on LinkedIn, or if it's, hey, here's somebody's flyer for an event. I'm sharing that wealth. And so now I'm not only empowering myself, but I'm empowering other people to take this information, if it applies to you, and use it, exposing you to it, right?
Yeah.
What you do with it after that is up to you. But I feel like if we do more of that collectively, now we have a better chance of making a difference in all areas of our lives that we really need changes in.
Yeah, that was beautiful. And I was just thinking as we transition to the next question is I met you the first time ever, 2024, which seems so long ago,
It
but
does.
it was literally just last year. A lot has happened in a year, but I met you in 2024 at the Essence Festival because it
Yes.
was the first time Essence Fest, or the first time I had known, and I have been to Essence Fest a lot. Um, had a film uh, piece to it.
Yeah.
And your film, remember me, my sister's like, we got to go see it. We got to go see it. And I was just taking pictures along the way. It was new. And so I was there. I was in New Orleans, my favorite place. And, I was at the Essence Fest, my other favorite place. But then I sat down and there was your documentary, and I was like, oh, and now I'm also learning. So I'm in
Yeah.
my element and I'm doing my thing, but then all of a sudden I get smacked down with this beautiful education piece. But this is also a good segue for you to tell us about, you know, this amazing documentary and what it's mean to
Yeah.
you and even how'd you even get it to Essence to begin with?
Yeah, it's been such a blessing to do Remember Me for the people that I interviewed who have now become family. There's Lou Gossett Jr. I interviewed him for it. I called him Uncle Lou before he died. He became like an uncle to me. There's another woman in there named Jackie Collins Riddick. I call Aunt Jackie. Um, so the whole process wasn't just about me doing a film.
Mm,
It was really about educating, but as I was meeting people, they became close to me. Their stories mattered to me. Their stories impacted me. Their wisdom impacted me. But we put together this amazing film that had all of these great elements, from people living with dementia to care partners to experts. And we wanted to be able to, number one, submit it to some film festivals, because I've done quite a few film festivals from, other projects. I've probably done about 45 different films at this point. And so that's another place where I get to be in that environment with other filmmakers and learn from them and share my knowledge and information. And we get to see each other's films and we become inspired. So I knew I was going to do some films. So I submitted to the Essence Film Festival. Didn't know, because it's always like, what are they looking for? Does it fit the format? All of those types of things. And it's not a sexy film. It is not a Fast and the Furious or, Mission Impossible. So you never know, but they accepted it, and I was excited about it. So, like you mentioned earlier, we did win several awards for it. Best documentary, best script, um, best editing. Like, we just had a lot of great things that happened from it, but it allowed us to get into places for more eyes to be on it, so that we can reach a wider audience, diverse people, some that were expecting to see something like that, some that weren't, like yourself. Um, and so it just allowed us to continue the momentum that we were creating with it. We started traveling around the country independently. So we don't have a big corporation behind us or anything like that. We were really doing it, one city at a time, pretty much out of our own pockets. Thankfully, we were able to find sponsors in different cities that invited us in. But it's been an amazing experience to go into these communities, to share this information and have conversations, to let people know that they're not alone.
mm,
They really see themselves and they see their loved ones and their grandmothers. And I didn't know this. So that's what she's dealing with. Oh, that I can go and talk to this group. I can do this. And so that experience has been just mind blowing for me, because I didn't have an idea of the magnitude of the impact that it could have. And so when I hear somebody that says, I wish I would have known this 10 years ago when
yeah,
my mother was first diagnosed, or thank you for sharing this because now I'm going to go and get checked out because this or that was happening. Or they'll see something and say, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to sleep with my CPAP because I understand how important it is to get that oxygen to my brain now. So
mm,
all of those little things just fuel it. It's like, yeah, we've done something, we pulled something together that is really having the impact that I thought it could have, but I just didn't know to what extent. And it seems like every place that we go, it's something different. Or this crowd might, really gravitate to the caregiving part. This one really gravitate to the people living with dementia and what they're going through, and they're paying close attention to that. We have a part in there that talks about the history of mistrust and distrust of the Black
mhm,
community with the medical community. And so those types of things lead to discussions like, okay, so what do we do now? Talks about clinical research and trials where we as a community don't often get involved. But when they create these medicines, it's not going to work for us because we weren't a part, so we don't know. So how do you balance that? Those are the conversations that we're having now. that we haven't been having in the past. So I think all of those types of things are really making a difference. And what we're showing right now is just the beginning because we're doing a 5-part series. So I'm super excited about that. There's so much information that we need to share. And so this first one is kind of the foundation. So we'll be able to talk more about the caregiver journey, the caregiver depression, the caregiver attempted suicide rate, those types of things. We'll be able to talk more about the Black church and the role of the Black church and what can we do more of. Those conversations we'll continue to have.
That is awesome. I have my brain just went in two different directions. I'm gonna go.
Sorry.
I'm gonna try to go on both though.
I got you.
This morning I was invited to the Impact Breakfast. I think I mentioned this. I just want to say it again though. The Impact Breakfast with the Alzheimer's Association here in Montgomery, Alabama, and Councilman Jen Wright. He got up
Mhm.
and his wife is diagnosed, and he said we have to do more work for the caregivers. But his story that I did enjoy, but that I really that impacted me was he was wearing his purple tie. As we know, Alzheimer's purple usually stands for the Alzheimer's Association, and he said, "I'm sick of this purple." He said, "I want to see more red and yellow and orange because when I see this purple, it reminds me of what I've lost and what I'm having to deal with in caring for my wife as a caregiver of someone living with Alzheimer's." And you talking about the caregiver is just we got to do more for the caregivers because it's not just about am I at risk for living with Alzheimer's, but as people who are caregiving those who how are we doing a good enough job of taking care of them because they're burning out at a quick rate?
Absolutely. We have so much work to do. And that's what I was saying earlier about around every corner, I learned that there's more to do. There's
Mm,
more people that we need to impact. There's more things so my personal vision with exposed dementia, and our team that works with me, it's massive because we're all touched in different areas. And so caregiving is a big part of it because several of the people that are working with me have been long-term caregivers of multiple people. And so they know firsthand. And the numbers are staggering. The impact that caregiving has on the economy that we don't talk about. All of
mhm.
those things are very important to have as a conversation that we're not having as much. Thankfully, there are more documentaries being done. There are more conversations being had, more organizations that are popping up to continue to have those conversations, but it's still so much work to be done. I think the number is 55 million unpaid caregivers
I
um,
heard that.
in the country. So these are people that have to make amazing sacrifices, but the government doesn't really support enough to say, I understand. But that'll change. That'll change. I'm a part of the policy committee here in the state of Georgia to have those conversations about policies, to be able to go to the Capitol and talk to our legislators and things like that, to really emphasize the importance in all of these areas. And that's definitely one of them. The other one is dealing with the training that's being done, for first responders, so they can know if they come across somebody, yeah, this could possibly be this person has dementia. They're combative because they don't know what's going on. They don't know where they are. Not that they're threatening your life. You know what I mean? So those
Yeah,
types of things, and it all relates back to the different areas, including caregiving, including the education, including the community partners, all of those things coming together to make a difference.
absolutely, absolutely. And in saying that, where do you think, because it is again the Guys of Social Work podcast, where do you think, or first I'll ask, in this work, have you come across social workers? And if so, in what capacity? And if not, where do you think social workers play a part in this space?
Yeah, I think we're all important. We all have a
Yeah,
role.
yeah.
I have come across some social workers, and then both from a standpoint of dealing with elderly people, in general, in making those connections to those needs being met. But then also on the learning side with the suicide rates and the
Mm.
depression and caregiver fatigue and all of those types of things where people are trying to do and teach about things to help in that process. And a lot of that's what I've dealt with through the social workers that I've come in contact with, including the author that I was talking about
Yeah.
earlier,
Yeah.
who is also featured in a documentary. And so those types of things are important for us to connect the social workers to the different clients of the social workers at different levels, because
Hmm.
now we're now starting to learn more about younger caregivers, and we're learning about how those young caregivers are impacted. Now they go into the schools and they have problems because they haven't slept all night because they had to be
Hmm.
sitting with grandma, or they heard grandma trying to leave, and they so now they go to school and have problems. Social worker gets involved. Like, no, this kid isn't a problem kid. They're trying to solve problems that they're not
They're a
equipped for.
caregiver.
Right.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so that goes across, from the time we're young to the time we're elderly. We need social workers to be a vital part of this conversation as well. So that just like we were talking about with the first responders, the
Hmm.
caregivers can, I mean, the social workers can understand what they're seeing when they're dealing with people too. They can say, oh, maybe this is dementia. Well, do you know what dementia is? So maybe we need to do some educational programming with social workers just to identify some basic areas there that we can assume, oh, they're social workers. They probably know this. No, one of the biggest things that surprised me, and people with titles, degrees, doctors, everybody else who watch Remember Me, and they say, I didn't know that. My assumption is, you know all of this already. This is just reinforcing something, and they don't. And so primary care physicians need more education because they need to identify it before they can refer you to a neuropsychologist or neurologist. Um,
Hmm.
so everybody has a role to play, and we all need to be educated more. So we're doing this, and maybe social work. I'm gonna call you for this. We're doing what we're calling micro learning series. And so it's going to be short segments that we're going to be putting on social media on different topics related to all things dementia. So it could be, why is it important to have, 7 to 9 hours of sleep? Why is it important to have exercise X amount of minutes 4 or 5 times a day or whatever? Why is it important to have communications about this, that, or the other thing? What should social workers be looking for as it relates to dementia? And so that could be a three-step, 3-point conversation just to give people different ideas. And we want to do that across all spectrums as it relates to it. So from caregiving to what to look for if you put something in the wrong cabinet and you couldn't find it, what does that
Right.
mean? Where do you go if you have questions? And so we're going to be doing this series to be able to educate people in these short, probably a minute and a half, videos. And so those that series is going to help a lot of people quickly get some information. And now you can take that information and you can go and apply it somewhere else or get more information. And so all the things and people that come up in conversations like this, it's a
Hmm.
notation to me. Okay, how do we address social workers?
You can get your duffel bag.
Yeah,
You'll have your
absolutely.
duffel bag. Yes.
Absolutely. And so it's
Yeah.
it's important for us to continue these conversations and
Hmm.
inspire. So not to belabor that point, but I used to talk about it's about time. And it's something that I used to do. I did it a few times at a couple of colleges. And time for me means transformation, inspiration, motivation, and empowerment.
I like it.
And so there is an urgency to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so if I can teach you how to transform your life, if I can inspire you to do something
Mm.
different, if I can motivate you to do something, if I can empower you to do something, now we can make a difference. I might not be able to
Mm,
do all of them in one setting or one meeting, but I'm intentional because I know we don't have a lot of time.
mm.
And so I try to do that in everything that I'm doing. And so that could be that micro learning series, just that one thing. You know what? This might transform your life if you catch it. Because God is already talking to you about it. And you might just need to hear this confirmation.
That's it.
You understand what I'm saying? And so
Yes.
that's the urgency that I have because I know my time on earth is short.
Mm,
Whatever that time is, it could be 5 years, it could be 50 years. That's still short to me.
mm,
So I'm going to do whatever I can. And that's why that urgency is there because I don't know. I've seen how lives have changed just like this because of dementia,
mm,
Alzheimer's, or one of the other forms of it. And just to be clear, in case people don't understand the difference, if I
mhm.
may.
Yeah, of course.
So dementia is an umbrella term, and it basically describes a set of symptoms. So the memory loss, language problems, confusion, those are just symptoms.
Hmm.
Something causes that to happen. And so that over 100 types or forms of dementia is what causes that dementia. So it causes you to lose memory. So that's why I try to emphasize when I talk to people, if you're diagnosed with dementia, you need to go back and say, what type? What kind
Right.
is it? Because
Hmm.
otherwise you're not going to get the help that you need, or they're not going to know which therapy to send you to. Like they could send you somewhere to get you some help, and it's doing nothing or making it worse, which is also featured in a documentary. Somebody had been misdiagnosed with frontal temporal dementia, and they were given medications that were only making it worse. Then they were determined to have young onset Alzheimer's, and they were given the right medication, and they were doing better. So if we just sat and said, "Oh, it's just dementia. That's just them. They're just, going crazy," and just left it at that, they would have never gotten to the point of getting the answers that they need. So the first thing is us getting an understanding of what dementia is and how it differs from Alzheimer's, because we kind of
Yeah.
lump
Yeah.
everything under Alzheimer's. It's not.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then from there, we need to figure out what are the next steps.
That was good, and thank you for that. And why it's so important. There was two or three things I got out of that last part you said. One, you can still live a quality life even with a diagnosis of whatever kind of dementia
Yes,
if you're able to get the right care, and your life isn't over just because you get a dementia diagnosis. And I love that you
absolutely.
made that clarification as well, that Alzheimer's is just one type of dementia. It's
Right.
not it's not the all it's not the only
Yes.
only thing.
That's the one
Yeah.
we know about the most,
Yeah.
and that's the most prevalent one, and that's the one that has the most research and the most funding
Hmm.
behind it and things like that. But there are a ton of other ones. As I mentioned, the
Yeah.
Wernicke-Korsakoff with my aunt,
Hmm.
frontal temporal dementia, which is what Bruce Willis and
Right.
Wendy Williams was diagnosed with. There's Lewy
Hmm.
body, which is what Robin Williams, the comedian, was diagnosed with
Hmm.
um, prior to him dying by
Suicide.
suicide.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of those. And then in our community, the Black community, we have a lot of vascular dementia.
Mm,
And those are the things, that was caused by the high blood pressure and the
mm.
diabetes and
Diabetes.
high, all of those types of things. And so we don't hear too much about it. We hear Alzheimer's, but we know in our community that we do have high blood pressure, high cholesterol,
Diabetes.
diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things that can contribute to us being diagnosed with
Mm.
vascular dementia. And so that's where the education comes in again. But it goes back to what I said earlier. Like, how you gonna tell somebody, 40 years in, 50 years in, you need to stop eating that fried chicken or cut back on it or whatever. No, this is how I've been living. I'm not gonna change, or put that cigarette down. Don't drink this. You know what I mean? Like, no, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to make those changes like that instantly. But if we can continue to have the conversation maybe somebody will say, you know what, I'm just not going to do it as much. I'm going to cut back.
Yeah.
And then they might get to a point where it's like, I don't even want it.
It makes me feel bad when I eat it or when I
Yeah,
do it.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now I notice the difference.
Mhm. You
I
couldn't
could,
notice it because you didn't take a break from it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I could literally eat pizza 3 times a day, 7 days a week. That's how
You
much I love it.
love it.
That's how much I love it. But once I said, you know what, I'm gonna take some time away from it. I'm gonna do some other things. I started exercising. I started,
Mhm.
changing some other things because now I'm aware and I'm trying
Yeah.
to empower myself to have a better life, a longer life. I want to spend time with my grandkids when
Mhm.
they get married and all. So I got to be here. So I got to make some
Mhm.
changes because that's what's important to me. And so once I started making some of those changes, I'm realizing, okay, I feel a little bit better. Oh, I'm a little bit stronger. Oh, I can do this. I can do that. And so now, even though I still love it, I just don't eat it as much.
We call that in my world harm reduction model.
I
You
like
don't,
it.
yeah. Instead of having a 12 pack, let's just do a 6 pack and just see
Ex-
how we feel. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
I love that. One of the things that I'm excited about, Chuck, is that we're going to get to bring Remember Me documentary to Montgomery, Alabama, hopefully this
Yes.
year. And
No,
what
this year. It's going to happen this
Yes,
year.
I know it is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
2025. And when I saw it in New Orleans in 2024, it never occurred to me that this was even a possibility. And so I'm just like
Yeah.
thrilled to pieces and excited about that. But what are your hopes that the community in Montgomery, Alabama, social workers in Montgomery, Alabama, and even just the surrounding community, what are your hopes that we could get from the film?
So a lot of times when I work with writers, and this is going to be a long way around to get to
I
that
want to hear it.
answer.
Yeah.
A lot of times what I tell writers, there's an audience, a specific audience. A lot of times they'll say, "Oh, this is for everybody. Everybody can get something from it. I'm writing this for everybody." But when we go through the writing process, I say, would you talk the same way to a 10-year-old
Mm-hmm.
that you would to a 50-year-old? So Remember Me is telling a story that expands generations. It's specific to African American experience, but not specific to African American people. And what I want people to really get from it is to see themselves or see someone that they can identify with and they be impacted to change something, whether it's change themselves or be more compassionate about what somebody is going through or be inspired, transformed. Some one of those things to do something differently or do something more. And so it might not be for everybody the same thing. So one social worker might see it and say, you know what? I want to learn more so that I can identify these things in my clients. Somebody else might say, I'm going through this right now with my mother or with my dad. I didn't know. Now I can figure out how to deal with it, or I can find resources. So anybody can get something from it.
Mm-hmm.
I did it from the perspective of introducing the African American community to these things to expose it, but then also to educate anybody else who sees it. So, for example, we did a screening in April at the Southern Gerontological Society,
Mm-hmm.
and it was probably 65% Caucasian audience. They were most impacted. And so they had questions about different things like, oh, I didn't know this. I didn't know that African Americans were twice as likely as whites to be diagnosed with this or that, or like it was those types of conversations. So my goal and my purpose is unapologetically to the African American community.
Yeah.
But I also know that I have a voice that can reach every other community as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so the conference that you talked about earlier, that was not a Black conference. It was an inclusive conference. So we had Black, white, Asian, Latino, we had men, women, older, young,
Mm-hmm.
it was everything. And everybody felt the same love. And we created that to be that. But then there are some things that will be specific to one particular segment. It might be to caregiving men.
Right.
It could be Black women caregivers. It could be different things. Um, so with the documentary, I really believe the community, especially a historic place like Montgomery, can really identify with so many different aspects of it because it does talk about the history of mistrust. It does talk
Mm,
about, the Tuskegee experiment. It does talk about Henrietta Lacks and all of
yeah.
those things that as a community we've experienced that unfortunately have still affected us and impacted us right now.
Hmm.
And so those things are conversation pieces that I want people to get from it, but ultimately to see something that would cause you to do something differently or something more in your life.
I love it. And I am excited
So am I.
about that. Yes, I'm excited about that. And
Yeah,
Chuck, this has just been an amazing experience. I've loved being able to spend the last hour or so with you. I've learned so much,
likewise.
and
Thank you.
I'm excited about this continued collaboration. But I am getting to my last question, and
Okay.
I thought of this question yesterday, just thinking about you and reading your bio and all that you've done in all the different areas. And so, what I was wondering is someone who is just starting out on this journey and in whatever space you decide to discuss because you're in all the spaces. What final piece of advice or knowledge would you want to give them as they start or as they're entering their journeys?
Yeah, that's usually an easy question for me.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because it crosses all of those areas that I'm a part of. All the professions that I've done, I say the same thing. Start where
Mm,
you are. Start where you are. You don't
mhm,
have to have a degree. You don't have to be called a doctor. You don't have to, be featured in Forbes magazine or MD magazine or anything like that. Just start where you are. You have a unique voice. Share your story. That will kind of dictate where you go from there. And so for me, my passion has always been writing and creative. And so I share my story that way. In what form? How does it come across? I figure that part out later. I just
mhm,
start. And so don't worry about being perfect. I tell everybody that I work with that way. it- Perfection is not the goal.
mhm.
The goal should be impact. And so, sure, you're going to find flaws in my books. You're going to find flaws in my photography. You're going to find flaws in my movies. You might say, oh, this sound was high here. This was low there. Oh, you should have cut this sooner over there. Great. I get it. It's not perfect. But is it having impact? And so that's what I'm focused on. And so if you're just starting out, it's okay. Start where you are, do what you can, and grow. Find people who will, listen to your story, find people who will share your story, find people who will maybe pull you under their wing and say, you know what, I see something in you. But if they don't, keep going,
Mhm,
keep
mhm,
going. Because as we mentioned earlier before we got started, I often look at it like if I don't tell my story, people are suffering,
mhm.
people are dying. And I say they're literally dying, waiting to hear my voice. Whether that voice is through a photography exhibit, whether it's through a movie, whether it's through a poem, like they're waiting to hear that. They're literally dying to hear it. And so when I see someone at the documentary and they say, I'm going to change my life, or I can keep going, or I'm going to do something different. What if I didn't do it?
Mm,
And they never got that information. And that could have been the thing that killed them. It's heavy to think about it that way, but that's the pressure that I put on myself because I want to make that impact. I want to help people. I want to develop things that will change the world. I might never see it, but if I can do something to have that impact and know, okay, this person is different. because I just did whatever I could do. Not perfect. I don't have $1 billion. I can't shoot people into space. I can't do any of those things, but I can share my story.
Mm-hmm.
I can share my
Mm-hmm.
story. And just letting people know that I haven't, done everything right. I've made mistakes. I'm going to make more mistakes.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll need to make that mistake to share that part of the story to let you know you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And so wherever you're starting, whatever area it is, it's needed. You're needed.
So beautiful. And thank you for sharing your story
Thank
with
you.
us today on the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. It's been incredible. I could listen to you talk all night. I was like, oh, keep going. It is incredible. Thank you so much. So,
Thank
so
you for
much for
having me. I
sharing
really
your
appreciate
story.
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. We are glad you were here. If you liked this episode, please come back to hear more stories of the journeys through social work, and please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. See you next time here on the Goddesses of Social Work podcast.